Hello and welcome to From the Top, the programme where we talk to the leaders in the aerospace, aviation and defence industry around the world. And today we've got something special for us in the UK. I'm going to be joined by Sir Stephen Hillier, who's the chair of the UK Civil Aviation Authority, having joined there in August 2020 following a long career with the Royal Air Force, where he actually became the Air Chief of Staff and led the entire force. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross by the UK and the Bronze Service Medal by the US for services in the Gulf. So Stephen, welcome to the programme. So we've had this distinguished career in the military, but now coming back to civil aviation. But in fact, that was your roots, wasn't it, in the first place?
Well, absolutely, as you say, Alan, it's coming back to my roots. My first pilot's license was issued by the Civil Aviation Authority when I was 17 years old. I had a flying scholarship with the Air Cadets and then took that to private pilot's license. So when the opportunity came up after my long RAF service to possibly be the next chair of the Civil Aviation Authority, it almost felt like the completion of a personal journey or a start of another journey in my aviation career.
Because of course that's one of the challenges we have in the UK at the moment, is how do we inspire young people to, at 17, get a private pilot's license and go on for a career in the industry?
Well, absolutely. I mean, my original inspiration was my father, who'd been in the Royal Air Force, but then it was through the Air Cadets, and I got exposure to the RAF, and I thought, well, that's an organisation where I'll be able to fly, which was my life ambition, but just sort of be challenging and realise my potential and give me opportunities. And that's what I felt throughout my career in aviation. So when I come back now to the Civil Aviation Authority, I think that's a vital part of the Civil Aviation Authority's role, is to look at that next generation and how do we play our part in inspiring them. I think aerospace gives us all fantastic challenges, and telling young people about that, encouraging them to be part of the enterprise, I think is just so important for all of us.
I mean, there is criticism that we're perhaps losing that entry point now. There's closure of airfields across the UK for housing and other developments, harder than ever before to get training and to actually be part of the industry. How do we get people in schools, air cadets, to get the funding they need to do that? Do you see that as something the Civil Aviation Authority will be promoting?
So it's something that the Civil Aviation Authority is absolutely a part of, is that we put a lot of effort, certainly over the last couple of years, into reaching out. And you need to reach out, and this has been my experience through the Air Force as well, to kids in school at about 10, 12 years old, and just start to give them that sort of idea of what aerospace can offer them, start to guide them on the pathways, the subjects that they need to study, ensure that is girls and boys equally, because there are opportunities for everybody. And then to keep that, sustain that as they go through the rest of their education. So just to take one example, is just next week at the Civil Aviation Authority, we're doing a virtual work experience program, 950 15 to 18-year-olds across the country, and just saying this is what you can have in aerospace. So I think it's a process of continuous engagement, continuously reaching out by whatever means that we can.
Now again, this is UK specific, but I think the aviation industry as such is being seen as something on the horror side at the moment, whether we're looking at pollution or whether we're looking at the disruption and chaos that we're seeing at our airports and with our airlines at the moment. We've had Sir Tim Clark and Willie Walsh from IATA being extremely critical of the UK, specifically Heathrow Airport, but others, not really keeping up with the prospect of recovery that is perhaps being okay in other places. How do you see that from the CAA?
So, to be clear, that as we all know, aviation has been through the greatest crisis in its history, over a century of history. I mean, the level of air traffic during the pandemic was at an extremely low level. And we always recognised that recovery out of that was going to be a severe challenge, and I think not just as the regulator but across the industry. And we're seeing those challenges quite clearly, and the CAA is acutely conscious of the disruption caused to consumers, and we have duties to look after consumers' interest, and so we are heavily engaged in dealing with that and trying to play our part, working with government, working alongside the sector as well, play our part in trying to ensure that that recovery becomes properly sustainable and that we minimize the disruption to consumers. And all the way along, ensuring that the CAA continues to perform its primary duty is to ensure that the enterprise remains safe and that aviation security is also properly looked after, and it is. But I do not underestimate the challenges going forward. You touched on, well, those wider challenges beyond. Having been through our greatest crisis, we've now got our greatest challenge, which is ensuring we have a sustainable enterprise, one which can decarbonise and ensure that we can continue to have safe and sustainable aviation going into the future. So these are tough and challenging times. The regulator has its part to play, the industry has their part to play, government policy has a part to play. It's going to require us all to work together to make this good.
And with that, do you actually see us speeding things up as far as sustainability goes? So there's been issues about how much SAF you can use at the moment, and we've had people saying we could use more, but we can't get hold of it. How do you see the CAA driving and pushing for us to have a sustainable future?
Yeah, we do need to move at pace. The environment demands it. The public pressure is, on ensuring we have sustainable aviation. We need to do our bit to protect the planet. So I don't see any prospect of the pace slackening at all. So what's the CAA's role? Well, we are one part of the solution, I believe. The solution lies clearly in technology. It will lie in government policy, consumer demand, public pressure, but there will undoubtedly be a regulatory element to this. It's why in May of this year, the CAA published our first sustainability strategy. And it's starting to describe not just the problem, we're familiar with the problem and the challenge, but what is the regulator's role? And I would describe it, and it says it in the strategy, is we do not have the leading role. Nobody will be able to lead this in its entirety, but the CAA, as the regulator, has a leading role to play. And that strategy will evolve over time. It'll be working alongside government, and we're part of the Jet Zero Council in the UK as well. It's going to be part of working with ICAO and all of our international partners. We need everybody to be focused on this and finding the solutions to this huge challenge.
And of course, one part of that is new aircraft, the advanced air mobility programs that are coming through. And also the unmanned, the drones, delivery drones and so on. So we're seeing a whole change, and if we talk to the manufacturers, and they're saying actually it will be bigger than we think it's going to be, and it will be sooner than we think it's going to be. But the big challenge, of course, is certifications. The CAA is actually doing some work, isn't it, with encouraging the work in with the unmanned air vehicles. Just tell us about that.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, I think people throughout the history of aerospace have sort of said, well, the pace of change has never been greater. Well, I'm going to say it for just now. I think the pace has never been greater, and that's based on my 43 years experience now as being in the sector. We're changing character, more uncrewed systems, as you say, more potentially autonomous systems. And in addition to those, if you like, the specifics of the platform, it's just that tempo. Is that previously what might have taken years and years to design and then to bring into service, that timescale is much shorter, and that's going to require a different response from the regulator as well as the different technologies. So what have we done about it? Well, clearly we've recognized this. We are investing significantly in the resources that we need to grapple this challenge. We have a strong innovation team, we have a rapid capabilities office, we have an innovation sandbox where we can invite in industry and for us to work for them to understand what the regulatory environment might look like, because clearly we need to look at how that works with all other airspace users as well. But importantly, we also need to understand what their needs are and make sure that we don't just try and regulate these new activities in the same way as we've done all of the previous activities. It might be the same, but it might require different approaches. So it's a huge area of investment, and if I might, that's why we're here at the Farnborough International Air Show. It's something the CAA actually hasn't done, certainly for a long time as far as I'm aware, and we're here in the Innovation Hall because we recognise that for that innovation to succeed, and we want it to, then the regulatory part is really important. So it's really exciting for us, and it's challenging, but we will be playing our part in making this succeed.
I'd like to ask you now about becoming post-Brexit era. I think a lot of people in aviation were hoping we would continue with the EASA licensing for pilots and crew. What's your view now that the UK is on its own, when we're trying to get into a more collaborative world? How are we going to handle those two things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really significant issue, and one that we continue to work very hard on. We're out of EASA. We recovered our capabilities to be a sovereign regulator, and I'm confident that we can do all that is required of us in that respect. But that does not mean that we're an isolated regulator. So we want to continue having the strongest possible relationships with EASA, with the FAA in the US, and indeed with partners across the world. And just one example of that was this week the Secretary of State for Transport announced National Aviation Authority's network, which is 5 nations who are looking at similar challenges, think similarly about aviation, and working together to address these common challenges. And that's in addition to a whole range of other bilateral relationships that we have as well. So I'm absolutely clear that aerospace is international, it's interconnected. We've worked for over a century to ensure that it is. There are a lot of pressures on that at the moment, and I want the CAA to do our bit to ensure that we're as well connected and well supportive of other organisations.
Now, Stephen, one question I ask leaders in this industry is, what is it that keeps you awake at night?
Always, particularly for a safety regulator, that is always a key question. What I would say is, what really makes us think is, what have we missed? Because we've all have seen this throughout our aerospace experience. Things, sadly, sometimes tragically, do go wrong. And so often it's because of something unexpected. We didn't join the dots in this particular way. Those things were potentially knowable, but we just didn't see them. So what keeps me awake is, what might we have missed? And to deal with that, how do we have the capacities in the organization to create that thinking time, to have that imagination to think what we might have missed? And an example at the moment is in the disruption, which we talked about, is we are working very intensively with airports and airlines to ensure that the standards continue to be maintained. But collectively, we're also saying, but is there some part of the enterprise which is actually really important, but we've missed applying a focus to that? So it's absolutely contemporary relevance. It might sound a little bit of a answer in a very subjective way, but there is a hard edge to it at the moment.
Sir Stephen Hillier, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed.